Hello everyone, it is me, Jojo, the motherfucking Jovian, back again doing another video for y'all. Today, I am doing a Erykah Badu type beat, a little neo soul type beat, trying to get my little, little sage on, trying to get my little crystals going, trying to get my little, my soulful side, trying to like that, that in a part of me that really like spiritual for real. Like I'm just trying to connect with the world and the people in it, like for real. I made this beat a couple days ago and I really liked it, and I really liked the vibes that were coming off of it. All my other beat tutorials, if you haven't seen them, you should probably go check them out. All my other beat tutorials have been just me doing more hip-hop-y kind of stuff. This one's more of like an R&B soul kind of beat, so I wanted to show you guys how I use my skill set to kind of make this kind of beat. We're gonna go right into it. So here we have the sample. We're gonna start with the sample. We're gonna break down the sample and why I chose the sample, how I chose it, why I did what I did to it, all my whole process. I'm going down and then I'm gonna do a whole breakdown. So the sample for this beat is a song by Erykah Badu called In Love With You, featuring Stephen Marley. It's a very bare song. There's like not a lot going on with it. I think there's just a guitar and a bass, and then it's just them two riffing kind of off of it. They do a lot of improvisation and stuff, and I really like that, and I wanted to kind of like take a part of that and then bring it into like a full beat. I took a part of the end of the song where it's just them two riffing with each other and going back and forth, and then I lowered it by a couple semitones, by 5 semitones to be exact, and this is what it sounds like. So I'll just play for you the loop at the start. So yeah, that was the first loop that I made. So I really liked the kind of energy they were bringing into that, and I thought it sounded really good just as a loop like that. In terms of mixing it, I didn't really do much. I just added a EQ to cut out some of the bass, because then I added a little bit of reverb to just give it a little room, give it a little place, to chill. For the second section of the sample, what I did was I cut out a bit more of the sample, and then I also added this part, which has a delay. So let me just play for you what that sounds like, and then I'll go into more detail on how I kind of created that. So basically what I did here is I put halftime onto it, which lowered it even more in terms of like semitones and slowed it down as well. I did this because I wanted to create a bit of difference between the different sections, because this is like the main part of the beat, and then this is the like more open place where an artist can come in and do their thing and kind of have more space to really just go at it. The delay creates that space so that there's still the sample in it, but it's not the same loop going back and forth. It makes it just easier for an artist to come in and do their thing without having a sample constantly playing in the background. Additionally, with lowering it a couple semitones, why I do that is because when an artist comes in to record their vocals are most likely going to be in the lower to mid-range section when they're EQing and stuff. So what I want to do with the sample is lower it by a couple semitones so that it's hitting more of like the deeper parts of the beat, and that creates more space for the artist to do their thing. Additionally, when I go in and add my own keys, my own guitars, and my own like samples and stuff on top of it, my own drums and stuff, it also creates that space for the brighter kind of instruments to come in and really cut through the beat. Because if the brightness from the sample cuts through too much, it's going to take up too much space and the things aren't really going to mesh well. So by taking it down by those couple semitones, it creates a lot more space for other things to come on top of it, like the artist's voice, extra instruments that you want to add to the sample, and all those kind of things. So that's just something you might want to think about when you're doing your thing. So yeah, that's what my thought process was with that. For the guitars, very simple. I just used a couple of samples that I found on Splice, and then I kind of just chopped it up and put it into an arrangement that made sense with the beat. So this is what this sample sounds like. I'll just play for you the first section here. So yeah, in terms of the guitar, very simple, not a lot going on with it. I didn't even use that much plugins. Only this one needed an EQ because it was hitting too much in the bass range and I didn't really like that. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the guitar. Very simple sample. I just wanted to create like a atmosphere for the beat and make it a little bit more interesting, and that's what the sample provided me. Okay, next to a more interesting part, I added some keys. So there's a couple things going on with these keys. There's a lot of things going on. So we'll start with the first section here. This is what the first section sounds like. I'll let you guys have a little listen and then we'll go into the next sections. So yeah, pretty simple. Just a couple chords in D major. The chords aren't that complicated. I just try to make sure, like, one thing that I've observed in my many years of trying to emulate neo soul is that the chords are very deep and they're very rich. So when you're playing your chords, you might like initially create something very simple, like just a simple triad, but then you can come in, add like a bass note at the bottom, or even like some notes in between, like here, that are a lot closer together, that make the chord really sound chunky and really thick and really rich, because that's kind of like what I've observed in like the neo soul world, is like what sounds nice. Neo soul kind of derives its sound from a lot of like the older soul sounds, a lot of jazz, and a lot of jazz chords. So if you really want to get good at like neo soul, I would insist on you learning chords that are not as simple and a little bit more complicated. Listening to a lot of jazz would help, or listening or looking up tutorials on like jazz musicians and how they play their chords and on piano. That might help a lot, because a lot of that neo soul sound comes from like that soulful, like complicated chords kind of thing. I'm not the best piano player, trust me, I cannot play for shit. But when structuring my chords, I just try to keep that in, especially when going into genres like neo soul or jazz or anything like that, that the chords need to be a little bit more sophisticated than like a simple triad. You need to go into your sevenths and your ninths and your like tenths and like all those like types of chords. Those are gonna really make it sound fuller and sound richer. But yeah, for the main part though, I kept it kind of simple. I'll play you this section now. It's a bit different from the first one. It's kind of like the same thing, but a lot more simple in its pattern. So let me just play that for you now. So yeah, same concept, but just a little bit more basic. For the sounds, it's pretty simple. I use the Lounge Lizard. This is a really good plugin for like neo soul kind of chords. There's like a lot of different sounds that are in here, like electric pianos, Wurlitzers, Rhodes, like those kinds of sound. Those are the kind of sounds you want to go for when you're going in neo soul. So yeah, Lounge Lizard for the starting part as well. And then I also brought in this sound from Splice, which I really liked. I thought it added a lot of texture, and I thought it added a lot of good movement to get the beat kind of rolling. So this is what that sounds like. Pretty simple sound. I actually don't know how to recreate a sound like this. I think it's like some sort of like tremolo that's kind of creating that up down effect, or even like a sidechain. If you know how to like use plugins like properly and really engineer your own sounds, this is a really good sound to go for. It's kind of like a Kaytranada house kind of sound. He uses this kind of sound like a lot on his beats because it creates that nice bounce. And also in terms of like structuring, it doesn't stop at the end of the 4-bar. It kind of plays a little bit into the next bar here. Let me play that for you and you guys can see what I kind of mean, because it's kind of hard to describe. So yeah, that kind of like stopped before we go into the next section. I thought was like interesting. I was actually struggling a little bit when I was making this beat to create that transition because I wasn't really sure how to go from this part to that part, but doing that kind of made it more interesting. So maybe try that in your beats if you're struggling to come up with interesting transitions. For the next part, it's the same chords again, but just different sounds. This time I used the piano from Omnisphere. I used the Keyscape Wash LA Custom piano. And then I also used another Omnisphere sound. I used the Vintage Vibe EP Juicy Tremolo, which sounds like this. Let me play that for you. So yeah, really juicy, really nice glossy kind of sound. I really like this effect. Going back into like sound selection, why I chose this was because just listening to a lot of neo soul, they use this kind of like effect as well, and I think it comes from like funk roots, because it sounds more like a sound like you would hear in like a funk song or like a psychedelic funk song or something. But I thought it created like a really good psychedelic feeling to the beat as well, because for me, I feel like neo soul is like psychedelic soul music for me. Like that's kind of like where I would place it, like a psychedelic soul music. And so using sounds like this kind of creates that kind of psychedelic soundscape that I really like. So really good sound selection there if you want to create a neo soul beat and you're kind of struggling to create that vibe. And then for the last section here is basically the same thing at the start, but with that same psychedelic sound that I just played for you there. Next, ladies and gentlemen, we have the bass. So for the bass, you know me, I have a problem. I have an addiction. You know my baby girl is always gonna come through for me though. The Scarby Rickenbacker. The Rickenbacker, of course. I have a problem. I have a sickness. I'm addicted. This motherfucking bass is the best motherfucking bass in the world, bro. I love this shit so much. And I have it on the Rapture preset right here. Very simple, nothing else. And then I have CLA compressor on it as well. With compressors, if you don't know what a compressor does, basically it will make sure that the sound is consistent throughout the beat, as well as help you make it a little bit louder. With the Rickenbacker, you don't really have to add much for it to sound good. It's a pretty good bass preset just on its own. So this is what this sounds like. So yeah, not too complicated for the bass, pretty simple. What I was emulating when playing this bass was, if you've ever heard a song by Sir from TDE, he has a song called These Evils, playing off like the Jay-Z song. I really like the bass in that song. I really wanted to emulate it because it has like this really good bounce to it. So that's kind of what I was going for. And if you're ever like struggling to come up with bass ideas of your own and you don't really know what to do with like the bass in your track, what I always do is I just go to songs that I already like and I try to emulate the bass player in those songs, because great artists steal and you gotta rob these niggas for real. Like even if you like using Splice and stuff, what I do when I'm going through on Splice is that I'll play a bunch of samples of like bass players that have just put up their bass ideas on Splice, and I'll just go play a couple and riff off of what they were doing and kind of come up with ideas based on what they were doing, because they know really good patterns, they know really good things to do melodically, and if you know like your scales and like music, that will help you come up with ideas faster. That helps you also like not need to use samples as much, because you start to learn different like bass patterns that you can use, different ideas that you can use over time, and you start picking up those skills over time. So yeah, that's it for the bass. I'm gonna start talking about the drums. So for the drums, I focus a lot of my attention on sample selection and creating that kind of bounce following through with the bass, using different samples to create that space, and not doing too much. Because I watched this video on how Erykah Badu and Jay Dilla worked together to make Didn't You Know? And what I realized from that was that beat, which is like the most pure and soulful and just like it's liquid gold in your ears. Like it's fucking fantastic. That beat was so simple. It was so simple. It was like bare bones. There was not a lot going on, but it sounds so good. All they did was add like a kick, snare, hi-hat, and some hand drums. That was it. That was it. That was all they needed for the magic, for real. Like, it's crazy. So I was obsessed, and I was like, okay, let me try to keep it simple. Let me focus on my sample selection and not try to overcomplicate things. So this is what the drums sound like. I'm going to explain further what I did after I come back. So yeah, very simple, very bare bones beat, but like, you know, it has a really nice groove to it. Obviously, I had to go and add a lot of delay to the hi-hat. Additionally, what I did was on this tracks, because I doubled the hi-hats, was I added Valhalla Supermassive, which is just like a delay plugin on this track. And obviously, it's a lot lowered, but on this track, it creates like almost like a shaker effect with the hi-hat, and it creates like this really nice rhythm to it. Additionally, what I also did on the bus of this, because all my drums are bussed out to this thing here, what I did was I put Valhalla delay on the drums. And this tidbit I learned from watching one of D'Angelo's mixing engineers. I think he made a video on YouTube. You should definitely go watch it. I'll leave it in the description. I'll also leave the Didn't You Know video in the description as well. But what he did was, when he was mixing the beat, he was talking about like adding delay to the drums and creating these like subtle ghost notes with the delay. So I tried kind of like to create a similar effect with this Valhalla delay. I put it on ghost mode and just added like a little bit of delay in the drums, and it creates like a subtle, more like psychedelic drum effect. It's very subtle. You can barely notice it, but it does add, it's like a little bit to go a long way kind of thing. So yeah, I really like that effect, and I think it really brings it all together. Lastly, we just have a couple of effects just around the beat. I'll play those for you now. So yeah, just a couple of effects, not a lot of crazy effects. I really like these like laser beam effects, like these kind of like cool shots effects. They sounded really nice. They just added like a little bit of like, made it more dynamic, made it interesting, made it different, as well as like a cymbal sound. These are always great for transitions. If you don't know how to make a transition sound good, add one of these. These motherfuckers are like fucking, what's that motherfucking tape that nigga made? It's like one of those. Just slap it on, makes it a whole lot better. And yeah, that's basically the full beat. It's not that complicated when you think about it, but I did try to add a lot of zest, add a lot of lemon, a lot of different things to try make better. And yeah, that's the full beat. I'm gonna play the full beat now so you guys can hear like what it sounds like all together. But the full beat is up on my main channel, so if you want to go listen to it just by itself without having to watch this long ass video, it's over there. You can watch it, you can listen to it, you can get more ideas from it if you want. And yeah, that's basically it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoy watching it. I like making, I like teaching y'all, you know, like some things about, you know, how to make a little beat or something. You know, I'm just trying to help a brother out, you know, trying to lift my brothers up, you know, so we can really get this money for real. Like there's so much money to be made, and we just gotta be out here and making it for real, like raking it, making it, doing all the things to baking it, you know.
Why do you act like that?
Like what?
The way that you act, you don't see how you act while people don't want to be around you.
So yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching. Go over to my TikTok, go over to my Instagram, go over to everything, subscribe, like, all that. Just support a brother. That's it for me today. Hope you enjoyed. Bye bye. Love you so much. Mwah.